Hello everyone, welcome to Twilight. If you have anything to say related to the video or notice any issues, let us know in the comments. For now, enjoy the video. What if Bella was chosen by an alien to be saved? Part 2. It felt so full, Edward. I felt so full, she babbled on. My pet, I don't understand. He felt insufficient seeing her cry in this way. When I was full of you and your fluids, she cried, clutching onto him. I felt so good, so safe. He smiled then. If you wish, my little love, I will fill you in that way every night. But hold off on final pleasure as long as possible. So you may feel full for as long as we can manage. She looked up at him with a beautiful smile. You would do that for me? He nodded. I would do anything that I could to make you happy and feel safe. She reached up for a kiss, and as she pressed up against him, her breast became flushed with his chest. She whimpered, my breasts, they feel sore. He nodded, they are full. Would you like me to relieve the pressure? She nodded shyly as he was already leaning down to latch onto her. He drank happily, and when she was drained of the milk she had made, he kissed her soundly. Thank you for that great honor, little love. Some females deny their males of this, and I am very grateful to have you. She leaned into him as he lifted her into the bath. They washed each other, and Edward checked her pussy to see if she had been damaged. Thankfully she had a slightly sore spot, but she was fine. When it happened it burned a little, but now I like it. It reminds me of what we did. How you loved me, she told him while he massaged her pussy. He kissed her deeply and then dressed them quickly before eating breakfast. Gifts were pouring in from the Zortonian people. But the only downfall was that his brother, Emmett, was at the gates trying to enter. Many people were shunning him because of all the things he was shouting about the king's pet, their queen. Jacob knocked on the door before entering. My king, my queen, I have information for you. The captivator who brought Queen Isabella here, he has been arrested. Your Majesty, he confessed that Emmett ordered him to bring her here. Edward froze. His brother had done this to try and get him to renounce the throne. His brother had tried to destroy everything. Have the guards arrest Emmett and Rose, publicly. Edward spoke in an icy voice. Bella curled into his pouch as her mate stood tall with his tails flaring out behind him. Edward went to the wardrobe and pulled out their capes. He placed Bella's on her and then pulled his on. This time they were black as night. He stalked through the corridors of the mansion. His little mate held onto him tightly, afraid that a fight would occur against his brother. Edward stalked into the throne room and began to pace. He was growling and muttering. The throne room doors opened, and 4 large males had Emmett and Rose restrained. With them were 2 more Xerxtonians, 1 male, 1 female. Jacob came to stand beside them. King Edward, Queen Bella, these are the traitors among us. Lord Emmett and Lady Rose ordered Victoriana and Jamazin to bring your mate here before her time. They knew that in 2 years she would be brought to you before you were forced to renounce the throne, and decided it would be best to get rid of her early. They ordered her brought here, but were planning on killing her before she ever met you. However, it was my turn to oversee the process, and they were unable to act as planned. Edward roared. Bella curled into his pouch. Thou dared to defy me? Hast thou forgotten my wrath? Prepare the square. There shall be a performance of punishment at 11 this evening. Everyone froze at his words. The 4 prisoners started to plead for their lives. Bella looked at her mate. She was afraid of him for the first time since she had been in his arms. She felt afraid. He stormed out of the throne room and took them back to their room. He went to their bed and Belle crawled out of his pouch. She had never done this. She had never willingly left his pouch. He looked at her and found her eyes filled with tears. Belle, he reached for her, but she flinched away. His tails, which were still flared, dropped immediately. My Isabella, my queen, what is wrong? She curled into a ball, facing away from him. Leave me, she whispered. He shook his head rapidly. No, I will not leave you. I will not cause you pain. I love you, my Isabella. She shook her head. You said I was brought here to be kept safe, secure. You have frightened me. I would like a few moments to myself. I fear you. He moved to kneel in front of her. I am sorry. I let my temper rule me. But you must know I would never harm thou. You are of utmost importance to me. I love you. Please forgive me. Please come back into my pouch where I can keep you warm and safe. She was shaking, both from the cold and from the separation. She had tears running down her face. How can I trust that your temper won't take over when we are alone? How can I trust that it won't turn you against me? He moved his tails to run down her back, trying to soothe her. You calm me, my little pet. You make me a better man. I would never hurt you. Bella was still curled away from him, but didn't move away from his tails. He could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying. Edward crawled into the bed behind her. He pulled her into his chest and held her as she cried. Don't scare me like that again, Edward. I can't lose you, but if I fear you, I can't love you. He nodded into her hair. I love you, my little human pet. I am sorry for frightening you and making you fear me. That was never my intention. I will promise to try and remember that you are a fragile being. You are a sensitive creature who should be cherished. I will never lose control like that with you present again. Please forgive me, my little counterpart. He was begging now, knowing that it was true. She could never truly love a man she feared. She turned to look at him. She stared up at him for a while before scooting closer and curling into his chest. He wrapped his arms and tails around her and pulled her to his body. He nuzzled into her hair and kissed her anywhere he could. She clung to him and reached for one of his tails to hold on to. He moved one so that she could hold on to it. She wrapped it around her arm and held on tightly. Truthfully, her grip hurt a little, but he kept his mouth shut, happy to have her with him again. At 10 in the evening there was a knock on the door. "Enter," Edward murmured quietly as he pulled a blanket of his little pet. Jacob stood in the doorway, not going near the queen. "My king, everything is ready for the performance of punishment." Edward sighed but dismissed Jacob. Using one of his tails, he ran it along the side of his counterpart's neck. Her nose scrunched as she awoke. "We need to go to the balcony that leads to the courtyard. The public punishment will be within the hour." "Are you angry with me?" she asked, looking at his chest. He shook his head. "No, my sweet pet. I am angry at myself for making you afraid of me. I have been a cold, dark ruler for longer than I realized." She nuzzled his chin. "Will, should I stay here?" He shook his head. "No, I will control myself. I will find a balance. However, you will be looking at my chest wrapped in both our capes when the punishment if executed. I don't want you to see that." She sighed. What is going to happen to them? "The captivators will be beheaded first. Lord Emmett and Lady Rose will first be shunned by the entire courtyard, and us. I will flare my tails in turn. During this time I am very vulnerable. However, that is why we shun them from the balcony. After this I will turn to them again and the people will choose. Beheaded, hanged, or stockade," Edward explained as he stood up. Suddenly he looked unsure of himself. "May I place you back into my pouch?" She smiled at him but shook her head. "Not without kissing me, and letting me feel the love you feel for me." He smiled and pulled her into his arms and brushing her against his body as he moved her up to reach his lips. Before he placed her into his pouch, they kissed deeply for a few minutes. He kept both hands around her, along with the tail she still held onto. It was still slightly painful, but he understood it was her way of making sure they stayed together. He walked to the balcony doors and walked through them. Everyone was surrounding the prisoners in the courtyard. As soon as he was noticed, everyone was silent. When he spoke, his voice rang out firm and strong. "Xerxtonians, we have traitors amongst us. The charges for the captivators are breaking the age limit and height limit. For the Lord and Lady, conspiracy and attempted murder. All these acts had involvement with your queen." He roared as he pulled Bella closer. She snuggled into him, still clinging to his tail, but she still faced the people. He ran another tail along her shoulder and wrapped it safely around her. "The punishment for the captivators is beheading." He pulled his cape around so that Bella could not see. She turned her body into his chest as she heard a scream that was cut off harshly. "Move them from the yard. Your queen wishes not to see the score." Immediately the bodies were moved. He unwrapped his cape, and she turned to face the people again. "The Lord and Lady are now below the peasants and servants in class," Edward announced as everyone turned their backs on them. When they turned back around, Edward flared 3 of his tails and wrapped his arms around his little pet. He turned his back and waited a few minutes. When he turned back, everyone clapped. "Now, as Xerxtonian people, you have the right to choose their punishment. Beheading, hanging, or starvation on the stockade." Bella tugged on his tail. He looked to her. "Ask them to take into consideration my hate for gore." He smiled at her and kissed her forehead before addressing the people. "Your queen wishes for you to take into consideration her dislike of blood and gore." Everyone started shouting for a hanging immediately. Edward nodded and motioned for the guards to prepare it. He pulled his cape tight around his mate, once more blocking her from view, and the view from her. Emmett and Rose were hung, and everyone cheered. Edward dismissed the crowd before carrying his little counterpart up to his den. She clung to him. When he entered their room, he went to their bed and lay down with her. "Are you all right?" She nodded and nuzzled into his chest. "Do you still fear me?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "No." She pulled back slightly and reached up to run her hands through his hair. "I think it was more of a reaction to the situation than actual fear. Make me forget I ever feared you. Fill me, please, Edward. Make love to me." He kissed her soundly, filling her mouth with his tongue and massaging her mouth. She moaned as she held onto him tightly. He took off his clothes quickly and then started to take his little pet's clothes off as well. Slowly he worshipped her, showing her he could be a gentle, caring man. He kissed her entire body before licking her from head to toe. He took her breasts and massaged them, feeling the milk let down. He kissed her lips as she whimpered from the heaviness of her breasts. He moved his tails to her ass and started teasing her. He dipped them into the lubricant bowl like he had before and slipped into her body. She squirmed in discomfort, but he growled lightly. "What did I tell you last time, my little pet? Stay still, and the discomfort will leave you." She meowed under him. "Edward, forgive me please. Please fill me for as long as Zerxtonianly possible. Please, please," she begged, holding on to him, desperate for more, desperate to feel loved. He kissed her again as he moved to enter her little body. She clung to him as he held her tightly. "Relax, my little pet. My little love, for there is nothing to forgive. You reacted to a situation that was new to us. I understand that your past makes you fearful of violence." He licked at her pulse point, making her relax completely in his arms. He started rocking them gently, trying to show her the love he felt for her. She clung to him, and when he bent down to take her nipple into his mouth to drink, she climaxed around him. He let himself feel the pleasure releasing as well and swelling inside of her. Now that they were stuck together, he nuzzled her breasts as he finished drinking. He switched to the other breast and bite down lightly. She whimpered and pulled his hair. He growled and used his free tail to massage her clit. She came again, sending him into another orgasm. He moved her to change the way they were pressed together. He came for a long time, filling her like she wanted. Now he would love her until the sun came back up into the sky, holding off his next orgasm for an hour, and the other 2 until much later. He finished drinking her milk. She was still not producing too much, but it was enough to cause discomfort. He licked up her chest and nuzzled her neck before kissing her again. "Is that what you wanted, my little beautiful human pet? To be filled with my seed, to be unable to move from under me until I have ejaculated into you 5 times. How many times do you want me to make you scream my name? 5, 10, 15, tell me, my little beauty, and I will give you anything your little heart desires." She whimpered and meowed under him. "Just hold me and love me. Make me come as many times as you can. Show me how much you love me and allow me to do the same. Show me how much we matter to one another." He nodded and pulled her legs around his waist. She shivered as the pressure changed again. He licked at her as she licked his chest, showing him that she too loved him. He growled lightly, "Scratch me, baby." She nodded and ran her fingernails over his chest and abs. She put them into the pouch and scratched his belly button. He licked at her ear, and she giggled. As she giggled, she bounced slightly, and it turned into a moan. Edward moved her so that she could reach his lips. They kissed as he pushed her down into the mattress on the bed. She spammed under him again, and he smiled as he licked her. He started rocking them together, just holding each other. She clung to him and placed small open-mouthed kisses on his chest. "I love you, my little pet. I hope to never have you question our love again. I will forever make sure that you know I love you. I cherish you, and I will always protect you." She wrapped her arms around his shoulders and came again. "I love you, Edward. I am sorry for making you feel my rejection. Please, I love you so much. You make me happy. You make me whole." He nodded into her hair and let go inside of her. She whimpered in slight pain. He was ejaculating more than he had ever before. "I will fill you, my little pet. I will fill you so much." She smiled into his chest and continued to kiss him. "I love you, Edward. Thank you. Thank you so much." He kissed her as she clung to him and fell asleep. He held her, and when she started squirming below him, he smiled and started licking at her neck. She woke up with a moan, and he flipped them over so that she was above him. "Move, my little pet. Move so I can make you even fuller." She whimpered and started rocking against him frantically. He started working her over with his tail again, and her movements became erratic with need. Finally, she screamed out in pleasure, and he exploded again inside of her. He could now feel the pressure of the fluids inside her trying to push him out. She whimpered from pain, but lay down on his chest feeling better than ever. "Are you all right, my little pet?" he asked, rubbing her hips. She nodded. "It hurts, but I can feel it, Edward. It's warming my heart." He smiled. "Anytime you want me, my little pet, I will fill you to the brim." As he kissed her, rays of light filled the room. The sun was rising. He smiled. "My pet, is it all right for us to finish up for now? We have some business to tend to." She nodded sadly. "Is there any way to keep your fluids in me?" He smiled down at her. "I can replace my member with my tails, but it would leave us vulnerable to attack. We can go to a store later today and find a store that carries a pregnancy belt." "A what?" she asked, confused, and realizing she may become pregnant. "A pregnancy belt. Women wear them during the offspring or reproduction season to keep the male fluids inside of them." He explained, realizing he never did explain the offspring season. The offspring season is when males can impregnate their counterparts. It is every 4 years. Every 4 years is when a female is able to carry a Zerxtonian child. It was 3.5 years ago, so we have a few months to prepare for that. "But the belt will keep my fluids in you." She smiled up at him. So I could keep your fluids in me all day, and then at night we would bathe, and then you would fill me again, and I would keep them until the next night. He smiled at her, glad that she wanted to be filled with him. Yes, but when you are with child, it will be 10 months of very careful coupling. I don't want to hurt you or our child. I understand. Wait 10 months of pregnancy? Bella asked, scared and confused. Edward nodded. Yes, my little love, 10 months. Usually a Xerxtonian female is pregnant for 12 months. But as you are human and your body is smaller, our child and you will remain tight and snug in my pouch for the last 2 months. He or she will still be attached to the cord that connects it to you, and will be feeding from your breasts almost non-stop. Coupling will not be possible for those 2 months. I will probably keep one of my tails in your tight, beautiful ass, but that is all. You will not have enough energy for it anyways. I will be feeding you constantly and you will be kept in my pouch. We will be very vulnerable, so security will be a little crazy. She nodded. If I have a girl, will you love her as you would a son? Edward nodded. Any child we create together will be loved. She sighed. I know, but how does it work here? Can a female be queen alone? Can a girl inherit the throne? Edward smiled. Yes, but it has never happened before. Females are so rare. Few are actually born into the royal family. She nodded. You should know, I was born a twin. A what? Edward asked, confused. Bella giggled. Twin, it means that I had a sister. We were born together, but she was too small to survive. I don't know if that is possible here. He looked so frightened. Human females can carry 2 children at the same time? She nodded as though it were nothing. Some carry 3 or more, though it is more rare. There is one woman who had 8. He got up with his member still swollen inside her. He started pacing and she started moaning. It felt nice to have him rubbing inside her this way. Unfortunately, their time was up. Edward came for the final time and slipped from her body. Quickly she pressed her legs together. He placed her in his pouch and held her. She snuggled closer to him and he rubbed her back. Tonight, my little pet. She smiled and nodded. I love you, Edward. As I love you, my little pet. He responded. He dressed them, and then he fed her when Jacob brought them their food. Jacob, call for Jasper, please. Yes, sir, Jacob said, worried for his queen. Jasper arrived soon. What is wrong, my brother? Can a Xerxtonian male impregnate a human female with 2 offspring or more at the same time, like a human male can? Edward asked outright. Bella blushed and buried herself in his pouch. She had taken to holding one of his tails, which he did not mind. Jasper stared at his brother. Human females can carry more than 1 child at a time. Edward nodded. That is what my maid has informed me of. Please tell him of your twin. Was that the right word? Bella nodded. Yes, my twin. She and I were born together, but she was too small and died. Jasper was only staring at her. I will call all the medics and researchers. We will see how this is, and if it is possible on our planet. He left swiftly. The king and queen tended to matters of the state before heading off to town. They arrived at a store that had a long line of Xerxtonian males with their counterparts in their pouches. Edward and Bella greeted them all, and then they were allowed to enter before all of them. All the males want to get the best belts for their counterparts. Many females don't like being filled to the brim, while most dislike it really. Edward whispered to her as he nuzzled her head gently. She smiled at him as he went to the front of the store. The store owner greeted them enthusiastically and started showing them pregnancy belts. They were designed to allow the feeling of being full to pass after the first few hours. Edward stopped him. We need something that does the opposite. The store owner's eyes bulged but nodded. Edward and Bella left the store with 5 different belts to try out, all whose main purpose was to allow the female to feel full, and not allow any semen to escape from her body. That night they tried the one that seemed the most promising. It had what seemed like a flap. It was put on the female before coupling, and the flap allowed the male to insert his tails and member. When they were pulled from her body, the flap would seal automatically, and could only be opened with a key. Edward fed from her breasts. She had started to produce more milk, and they decided that he would feed during coupling and then in the morning. Once she made more, he would also feed at lunchtime. That night Edward placed his little mate on top of their bed and put on the pregnancy belt. It was snug and he was worried she was uncomfortable, but she assured him that it felt good, and would probably feel uncomfortably tight with his seed, but she was sure it would add to her pleasure. He started off slowly, kissing and licking her entire body. She was a whimpering mess by the time he attached himself to her breasts. He pushed into her and slipped 3 of his tails into her from behind. They both moaned at the feeling of being complete. He pumped into her and ground into her. She held onto him tightly, and it was the best feeling ever for them both. She came quickly and Edward pushed in as deep as he could as he became engorged into her. She whimpered at the intrusion, never having him so deep before. Edward, oh, Edward, it hurts. He nodded. Yes, my pet. That is normal. You see, this is how we will be joined together from now on. Offspring season is coming. And we need to make sure your body is ready. We need to make sure you are nice and stretched for my body. During offspring season, I will expel 3 times the amount of fluids that I do now. That is also because I will have to come 7 times before leaving your little body. I will be bigger during this time as well. She nodded as he brought her over again. He filled her 4 more times as she forgot the pain and fell into pleasure a dozen times throughout the night. When he finally slipped from her body, the belt's flaps closed. She whimpered but sighed happily. I am so full, Edward. Thank you for doing this for me. He chuckled. I love that you enjoy being filled with my fluids. How does the belt feel? She whimpered slightly. It is so tight and snug with my body being full that I feel as though I can barely breathe. But Edward, I have never felt this loved. Thank you. He held her closely all night, and then in the morning dressed them both. She snuggled into his pouch and ate what he fed her before dozing off. Edward was worried for his little human. She didn't eat much, and he was exhausting her. He went through a lot of paperwork that needed to be done, and then called Jasper to see if he had found anything. But the medics and researchers were still reeling from the new development. They were asking every human on their planet about this phenomenon. At lunchtime, Edward woke his little pet and fed her. She complained about her breasts, so he drank the milk that had accumulated from the night before. Her breasts had already grown some and were producing more milk every day. She slept for most of the day, and then that night when he was opening the pregnancy belt to bathe her, he noticed that she was skinnier than she had been when she first arrived. He called for Jasper and covered her body. She has been sleeping all day and she is losing weight, he informed his brother. Jasper took a blood sample and did a quick overview. She was malnourished and exhausted. Edward whimpered. He had been keeping her up and had not been feeding her enough. He had been drinking her milk that was taking all her nutrients from her. Jasper started a line into her bloodstream and hung it next to their bed. Edward curled around her and wept. Hours later, in the dead of night, Jacob still sat outside the king and queen's room. His king was still crying for his pet, and his queen had yet to awaken. He had been sitting outside their bedroom, since Jasper had informed him that the queen could be very ill, and if he needed to be called, it would have to be done so quickly. Edward cried for hurting his little human. He was supposed to protect her and care for her, but he had hurt her and had not cared for her properly. Now she was ill. Isabella began to stir in his arms. He hushed her as she began to move. Be still, my pet. Slowly she opened her eyes and looked to the man she loved. She lifted her hand to touch his face, but felt a tug. Don't move your hand, little love. You have a line in it. It is giving you the nutrients you need, and I could not provide you with. His voice cracked as he admitted this. She ignored him and used her other hand to wipe the tears from his face. Edward, why are you crying? And what do you mean nutrients that you could not give me? She whispered, confused. You are ill, my little love. I have failed you. Your body is malnourished and could not take the strain. He nuzzled into her neck and kissed her gently. I am sorry, my little love. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, but sleep overtook her, and she snuggled into his embrace. He held her tightly until the green sun was in the sky once more. Jacob, he called out, knowing that his butler would be near. Sure enough, he was in the open doorway in seconds. Bring me 2 servings on a single plate, please. Jacob nodded and quickly went to retrieve the food. Once he had delivered it to his king, Edward woke his little human and helped her sit up. He coaxed her into eating, but she would only eat the amount of less than half a portion. He growled, Why do you refuse me? She looked at him confused. I don't mean to, I just fill up quickly. He whimpered but nodded. From now on you will have 6 meals a day. She wanted to argue that it wasn't necessary, but a look at the line in her arm made her realize that it was. Tears filled her eyes. Are you disappointed in me? He shook his head. No, but you must allow me to care properly for you. She nodded once more. Once the line had done its job, Jasper took it out and Edward put his little pet in his pouch. He curled his tails around her and had her sleep while he worked. You will be eating every 6 hours, Edward explained as they walked back to their den. So when I wake up until I go to sleep? Bella asked. He shook his head. No, I will have Jacob leave us your meal in our room, and even if I have to feed you in the middle of our coupling, every 6 hours you will have a meal. I will wake you if I have to, but you are my main priority. She sighed but nodded. I understand. I'm sorry for being such a burden. Edward shook his head. No, my little pet. I should have been doing this before. I saw you weren't eating enough. I should have done something. She shook her head. No. Yes. He all but snarled. I am a male. I should have taken better care of my female. I should have not have drank from you, knowing you weren't eating right. I weakened you. He held her closely and nuzzled her neck. I love you, and I need you to be in good health, perfect health, so that in 4 months when offspring season begins, you can be ready for longer coupling. And your body needs to be healthy, so that our offspring can grow inside you. You know, during offspring season males' pouches extend, and our cocks are in our pouch. My little pet, during offspring season you will all but live in my pouch, my cock inside of you. We may not use the belt because once I am able to leave your body, I will be reconnecting immediately. I want to spend every hour of every day of offspring season inside of you. For that to happen I need you to be healthy. Also it'll be good to get used to eating while we are connected. Make love to me, Edward, now please, I need you. Bella all but cried. He pulled off their clothes and quickly pounded into her little frame. Pushing in as far as he could, hitting her cervix, he exploded and swelled inside of her. He latched onto her breasts and began to drink the milk that she had produced. He worked her over, roughly taking what he wanted from her little body. All the while Bella was in all but constant pleasure. Finally, after releasing 3 times, Edward slowed down. Bella had come 6 times already. He licked at her breasts and rubbed her entire body. He pulled a blanket around their naked bodies and called for Jacob. Jacob came into the room, left a tray of food and left quickly. Edward stood and Bella whimpered at the movement, still sensitive. Let me feed you, my little pet, Edward said as he sat with her, straddling his legs, pushing his cock farther into her cervix. He licked at her neck and kissed her sweetly. Get used to the feeling of me being against your cervix, my little pet, because that is where my cock will live during offspring season. Males grow during this time and expel more seed. It will get very tight in your pussy. You will be in constant pleasure. He started feeding her as he talked. There will be times when we are in the center of a crowded room, and you will become undone. Everyone will know that their queen is being satisfied, and that her male, their king, is creating an heir. She shivered and orgasmed again at the thought. You like that, don't you, my pet? You love that, don't you? You want people to hear you scream. You want them to see me licking at your neck and drinking from your breasts. She moaned and nodded. Please, Edward, please, I need more. He nodded, standing and carrying her to the tantra chair. He lay down and pushed her so that she leaned back. Just feel my little love. He started grinding her down on him and buried his tails farther in the ass. For 4 months Edward and Bella practiced coupling every night. Edward made sure Bella ate adequately and drank from her breasts as much as possible, in order to increase lactation. Finally, offspring season was upon them. Edward's pouch had started extending a month prior, and now Bella wore a new pregnancy belt that allowed for the swelling that will occur from the constant pleasure. Their schedule was set up so that they could bathe in the middle of the day as well as in the morning, so that Bella's system wouldn't become filled with old sperm in her body. Edward had her meals planned out, so that she got all the nutrients she needed, plus 2 supplements that will help her lactate more and prepare her body for the child they hope to create. Edward lowered his little human into his pouch and moaned as he entered her. She whimpered as she felt him enter her. He was almost twice as thick and at least 2 inches longer. His tails had become more textured and thick, and as 2 of his tails entered her from behind, she felt them fill her more than 3 tails had filled her before. She whimpered and tried to move away from him. He growled and held her how he wanted her. Edward had explained before that she was to submit to him completely. The first couple days would be difficult because he was so much larger, and the intrusion into her body was that much more invasive. But soon it would be nothing but pleasurable until the end. Near the end her pussy would be aching and she would try to pull away, her pussy tender and sore from the constant coupling. Her breast would also be sore because he would start to drink from them 4 to 6 times a day near the end, so that in 10 months, they would be used to the demand of milk that their child would need. The medics had gotten back to them and found that males on their planet were unable to father twins. Only single pregnancies were possible. For the first week of offspring season, Bella was getting used to the constant coupling. During the 2nd and 3rd week, everyone in the mansion had seen or heard their queen and or king go over the edge. They were always connected, and Bella was used to the feeling of being overfilled. The new pregnancy belt was being stretched to its limit as Edward filled his little love with seed. The last week of offspring season, Bella's pussy was sore and overworked. Edward was careful to be more gentle and tender with her. He was aware that even for a Xerxtonian female, he was releasing too much seed. They had taken to bathing 3 times a day, so that Bella's poor pussy could be drained of sperm. Edward was up to drinking 4 times a day from her breast. The medics had decided to increase the lactating supplement to help her produce more milk. At the end of the last day of offspring season, a medic came in and took a blood sample from Bella. Everyone was sure she was now with child, but Edward and Bella didn't want to get their hopes up. Bella was worried that she would fail him, and he was worried that he had failed her as a male. Edward made sure to massage her hips and her back. He knew that she had been hurting the last week of offspring season, and he hated it. But he had to. They needed an heir, and the urge to be with his counterpart was too great. She loved being with him, and even though it had been more painful than pleasurable for the last week, she knew that if that is what it took for them to have a child, she would endure it every 4 years. The next day, as Edward cuddled his little pet in his arms, the medics arrived with the results of the blood tests. Edward covered them with a blanket and called them in. "Hello, Eliezer. What is the verdict?" Edward stated. The medic smiled. "My king, I am glad to inform you and my queen that my queen is 3 weeks pregnant." Edward and Bella smiled widely. "Thank you, Eliezer, you may leave now," Edward stated as he looked down at his female. "We did it, my little love." She nodded and placed her hands on her stomach. "We're going to have a baby." He nodded and covered her hands with his. "In just over 9 months our baby will be in this world. He or she will still be attached to you. So the 2 of you will live in my pouch. I will be very volatile. We also need to work on your milk production. But my little love, thank you. Thank you for giving me this gift." Bella smiled up at him. "No, Edward, thank you for being a wonderful husband, for caring for me, for loving me, and for giving me a child." They cuddled together for the entire day and night. In the morning, Edward arranged for an increase in security, and added more blankets to his pouch for his little love. She snuggled into the pouch and curled into his chest. Edward proudly wrapped 2 of his tails around her, and allowed the guards to flank him. They dealt with everything, and everyone was happy to stay a few extra feet away to appease their king. They all saw their queen looking extremely tired, and none minded pausing meeting to allow her to eat. Edward was worried about her. "My little pet, are you okay?" She shrugged and huddled closer to him. "I felt so tired, Edward, oh so tired." "Stay awake, my pet," he told her gently, and asked for Jasper and other medics to be brought. In minutes, 3 medics and Jasper had arrived. Edward lay her down gently, keeping 2 tails around her, and only allowed Jasper to examine her. He sighed. "It seems that because she is so small the child is taking all her energy. She needs to eat more and may spend most of her time napping. Really on Earth she would need what is called bed rest. That means she would only get out of bed or a laying position to move locations or go to the restroom." Edward nodded and called for Jacob. "From now on you bring us meals every 4 hours. No matter what we are doing. Just be assured to knock first." Jacob nodded, worried for his queen. "I need a room prepared. I need a counterpart's chair, tantra chair, and a meeting table from now on. We will have meeting with my laying with my pet, and will only sit to sign documents. Tell everyone that their queen is not to be disturbed." The guards and medics nodded. Jasper looked to his king and brother. "You will take good care of her." Edward held her close to him and placed her in his pouch. She snuggled into him and fell asleep soundly. He went to the room that had been prepared and ignored everyone as he situated himself on the chair, laying down and pulling a blanket over his pet. She was completely covered from view, except for her head. He then pulled his cape closed in front of him with one of his tails, creating a tent around her. Finally, he looked up at the people gathered for their meeting. "King Edward, is our queen all right?" one of the advisors asked, concerned. Edward nodded. "She is okay. However, you have all seen her tiny stature, and during offspring season that I had her eating every 6 hours. But it was not enough. Her body is already feeling the strain. The medics and Lord Jasper have declared she should not be standing. I can't be away from her, and matters of our planet must be attended to." Everyone nodded and agreed to keep as quiet as possible to allow their queen to sleep. Meetings continued, and every 4 hours Jacob would bring a meal for the queen. Everyone was asked to leave the room, while Edward woke his little pet and fed her. She didn't argue and ate what he fed her. At one point she started asking for bigger portions. They were given to her. When she started to have cravings, other human females we consulted as to what Zerkstonian food was similar to the human one she was asking for. He hugged her tightly. "It is all right, love. You are just at 5 months today." She gasped. "But that is more than half the pregnancy." He nodded. "I am just happy you are lucid. You have slept and only been awake when I was feeding you. I was only drinking from you once a day, but Jasper and Eliezer believe that it is safe to get you producing a lot of milk again." She smiled up at him. "I would love nothing more." They coupled for hours that night, and Edward kept drinking from her. They decided he would drink every 4 hours after having fed her. She was awake more now but napped after eating and allowing Edward to drink from her. He was happy to have his pet awake once more. It had been frustrating for him to see her in such a state of weakness. At 7 months, Bella looked as though she was 9 months pregnant with human twins. However, doctors assured their rulers that all was well, and the child was probably male, and as large as his father had been at that point. At 8 months, all meetings were held through video communications, and the king and queen had retired to a heavily guarded tower in the estate. Edward was anxious for his child to come into his world, and Bella couldn't wait to be a mother. Edward had taken to drinking from her every hour, and her breasts had swelled more than either had expected. She looked glorious. Finally, at 8 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, the child was born. Bella had a hard time with the birth. The child was very large. Once he was born, he cried until he was latched onto his mother's breast. Edward wrapped them in a birth blanket tightly and inserted a tail into her from behind. She settled onto it and snuggled his chest. As their child, Fetty, was kept under the blankets and hated the light, so the room was kept dim. Food was delivered via a food elevator that Edward had installed. Bella found it fascinating how the child was no longer in her womb, but needed her. His umbilical cord had not been cut, and they were still attached. She realized that when he fed from her, it felt completely different from when Edward would drink from her. Edward fed her and cared for his pet and child for 2 months. Meetings were kept to once a week, and only what was absolutely necessary. "What should we name him?" Edward asked her after a month of calling him the baby. She giggled as she ran her hands across the child's head. "I don't know. He needs a strong name, like his father." Edward smiled. "What about Prince Charlemagne? Prince Charles for short." She smiled at him. "Charlemagne. Itomapartal, does that mean he would be named after you, in a way?" Edward nodded. "Yes, my pet. But he would still have his own name, Charles, like I have Edward. My father, his name was Karamapartal, but he went by Carlisle. But in English it would be more like Carlisle." Bella beamed up at him. "Should we announce it to Zorkston? Prince Charlemagne, to be known as Charles, has been born." He chuckled. "Not yet, little pet. We must wait another month when he becomes separated from you, physically. He will stay all but glued to your milk for another 4 months after that." She nodded in understanding. "So it will be 5 months until we can be together again?" He looked at her confused. "No, in a month we can make love, my pet." She looked worried. "But if Charles is attached to my milk, my breasts, how will we?" Edward chuckled. "I forgot I learned this is school. Here on Zorkston, males have a strong need to be with their females. On Earth, children must be in another room. But here they remain with the mother up until they are a year old. Only then are they allowed to sleep in a separate bed, but still remain with the parents up until they go to school. At age 6, males are out of the pouch at the age of 3. Before then they are with the mother in the pouch." She looked stunned. "We make love while he is drinking from me?" Edward nods. "I remember my father and mother continued to make love with me in the room up until I was 6, and started going to school. I don't think you are okay with that. But yes, we will be coupling while he drinks from you. It is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a natural thing. After the first 4 months of being together again, I will start drinking from you again. He will be able to feed from you sometimes until he is a year old. Then he will only want regular food." Bella still looked unsettled. "Do not fret, it is more of a cuddling session. Really. I enter you and become engorged. Then we just rock together until we have both been satisfied." She looked up at him. "I don't know how I feel about this. But I trust you. If this is how things are done, then I will be okay with it." He smiled and helped Charlie switch breasts. He kissed his head and then Bella's chest. He kissed up her body to her lips, and the kiss languidly, before he pulled out the tail he had in her ass and licked it clean. She whimpered and he put it back into her. He hugged her to his chest and placed them both back into his pouch. When the 2 months were up, Edward placed them on the bed and helped Bella finish the delivery. The cord was pulled from her, and it fell from Charlie. Edward helped her bathe as she held Charlie in her arms, and he ate away. Finally, they emerged from their isolation, and the emergency system was used to present the prince to the people. They were overjoyed with the news of their next heir. Everyone was sure to keep a good distance from their king. Though he was a gentle being with his queen and prince, they all saw him stiffen if anyone came too close. The little prince suckled like a champ and rarely came up for air, though he liked to hold his father's tail. During meetings and such, he would be heard drinking from his mother, but never seen. Edward made sure to keep both his counterpart and his offspring out of view. Once they returned back to their chambers, Edward was eager to couple with his little pet. True to his word, It was more cuddling than passionate love, but Bella still felt more love than ever. Bella decided she also wanted to wear the pregnancy belt again, and Edward obliged happily. Charlie finally stopped drinking every second of every day when they had returned to normal living for a month. 2 months after that, he actually stopped drinking from her breast long enough for Edward to hold him for a few hours. Charlie loved being with his parents and loved playing with his father's tails. Bella asked Edward about their son's tails one day as they lay in bed. So far all he had was what looked like a stump. Edward smiled at her. Once our little offspring is 4 months old, the trunk will split into his tails. I talked to Jasper and the medics. They say to compare it to teething babies on Earth. He will have discomfort for a few days. Bella nodded in understanding. When will his teeth come in? They come in when they are about 6 months old. It is painless for them because they are already there. Their outer gums, which prevent them from hurting their mother's breasts, fall away. When they are 4 months old, they can eat soft, pudding-like foods. Once their teeth are uncovered, we can slowly work up to more solid foods. Edward explained, running his tails along her back. She smiled up at him and looked down proudly at their son. He was strong and already growing so fast. He was already about 2 feet long, almost as Zayton. When will his growing slow? She asked as Charlie snuggled into her in Edward's pouch. Edward smiled down at his little pet. It will slow significantly at the end of next month. When he is 5 or 6, he will have a growth spurt and grow almost as Zayton each year. That is a little more than a foot. He will stop growing when he is fully grown. I believe he will come close to my 30 Zaytons. That means he will be finished growing when he is 4. He will be about 2 Zaytons. So when he is 33, he will be fully grown. But when he is 13, he should be taller than you. Wow. Edward, do you have any parenting books for Xerxtonian children? I just feel so inadequate, Bella said as she drifted to sleep. Have no worries, if there is no book I will have one made for you, Edward said, kissing her softly as he too fell into dreamland. Time went on, and as Charlie grew, the kingdom took notice of his strong will and good heart. When his trunk split, he was a grumpy little boy for a few days. Edward was proud to see he also had 4 tails. His mother was never far, and his father was always at the ready to protect his counterpart and his offspring. When Charlie was 3, Edward had a smaller bed put into their room where he would sleep during offspring season. He understood that what his parents did under the covers was coupling, and it was something very special done between counterparts. He had left the pouch a few months prior to his 3rd birthday. Bella and Edward had returned to their passionate lovemaking by the time he was 2. Bella now understood why he had to be kept so close to them, and why it was a normal, natural thing to complete the coupling while he was in the pouch or in the room. Edward drank from her every 6 hours after she ate, and thankfully she was much healthier after having given birth. Stores began sending blankets and warmers. The people began sending baby clothes and diapers. It had been 3 months when word had gotten out that the queen was having a difficult pregnancy. At 5 months, Bella was starting to be awake more. Edward, what has been happening? She asked, confused. You are on what humans call bed rest. You have been sleeping for most of the time, but you are better. Your body is now receiving all the food it needs and what the baby needs. She nodded. Edward, how far along am I? I can't remember. She sounded so sad. Charlie was a lot like his father and was very protective of his mother. He was working on his growls, much to Edward's pride and Bella's amusement. Bella and Edward spoke about waiting to have another child, but Bella really loved being pregnant with Edward's child. He loved that in her and promised they could have as many children as she wanted, as long as it was safe to do so. The medics agreed and did many tests to assure their king that their queen was healthy and thriving in Zorkston, more so than any other female they had encountered. When offspring season came once more, they stayed connected throughout the 4 weeks. Charlie was almost as volatile as his father, and kept one of his little tails attached to one of Edward's, or around Edward's ankle at all times. Charlie was happy to protect his parents as they created a little sibling for him. Edward and Bella decided that if she were to become pregnant, Charlie would remain with them throughout the pregnancy, including the 2 months spent in isolation. Charlie agreed with them wholeheartedly. Bella did fall pregnant, and Edward immediately set her back on her old eating schedule every 4 hours on the dot. Charlie accompanied his mother and ate every 4 hours as well. Edward drank from her milk more often as well. Soon she was round and perfect. Charlie seemed to have started his growth spurt a little early, and was already close to 2.5 Zaytons. He grew steadily throughout the pregnancy, and a day before his birth date his younger sibling was born. He was a little smaller than Charlie had been in the beginning, but still a strong male, larger than most babies. What should we name the new prince? Bella asked Edward. What would you like his shorter name to be? Edward responded as he lifted Charlie onto the bed with them. Charlie was careful and stayed glued to his father's side. They had spoken to him about how careful they had to be once the baby was born for 2 months. Maybe Mark, Bella said softly as the baby switched breasts. He sucked harder than Charlie had. Edward noticed her slight discomfort and rubbed her back with his tails. Charlie noticed as well. Mama, you okay? He asked from his perch next to Edward. She smiled at him and nodded. Yes, baby, your little brother is just strong and eager to eat. Edward kissed her forehead and wrapped his free tail around Charlie, who wrapped his tails around Edward's arm. I think Mark would be a strong name, Edward said. What do you think, Tarlamapartal? Does Mark sound like a good short name for your brother? Charlie nodded. Grandpa was Karamapartal, Daddy is Idtomapartal, and I'm Charlamapartal. What would the baby's name be? Martakamapartal. Mark, Edward stated. Bella smiled. Martakamapartal. I love it. Soon it was time again for the Edward to lead his family back into the tower that had housed them, while Bella cared for their newborn children. The boys all shared a bed, crawling in next to each other and watching over their mother. Kevin had just left the pouch before offspring season, and found it comforting to have his brothers so close. They celebrated Kevin's birthday, then Mark's, then Charlie's, then Blaze's, then finally Gerald's. Still the new baby refused to make an entrance. Bella was very uncomfortable, and finally on the day after Gerald's birthday, the new child decided to make an appearance. The brothers stood around her head as their father delivered their new sibling. As its cries filled the air, Edward gasped and stared at the child in his arms. Edward, is he okay? Bella asked, frantic. He nodded but didn't speak. The baby continued to cry in his arms, wanting to drink. Edward grabbed a blanket and covered the child before passing it to Bella. Bella placed the babe at her breast, and immediately it latched on. Edward, why aren't you saying anything? Bella asked, worried. The boys, worried about what was going on, all braided their tails together. Edward looked up at his counterpart and smiled happily. My pet, our child. It is not a male like the others. You have gifted me with a daughter. Bella gasped and looked down at her child. Sure enough, it was a little girl who was curled up on her chest, drinking from her breast. She was definitely smaller than her brothers had been. Bella smiled and snuggled into Edward's chest as he lifted her into his pouch. He settled into the bed and motioned for the boys to come forward. Charlie recovered first and went to move, but found he couldn't. He chuckled. Guys, unbraid your tails. Bella giggled at them as they did so and looked back down at her new baby. This little girl was also missing a trunk. She would have no tails, much like other Xerxtonian females. Charlie moved forward slowly. 4 times he had done this. 4 times he had approached his mother after she had given birth, but never had it been a sister on her chest, and not a brother. He looked over at her and smiled. Dad, we are going to have our hands full when she is older. She will be beautiful like Mama. His brothers joined him one by one, Mark, Gerald, Blaze, and finally Kevin. Kevin, like all the others when they had met their first sibling, snuggled into his father's side and watched in fascination as his mother, who was encased in his father's pouch, tended to his sibling. What do we name her, Edward? Bella asked, worried. Edward smiled. We do the same thing we have always done. You choose the short name, I choose the long name. Bella smiled. I have never had to think about girl names before. Boys, what do you think? They all looked lost and shrugged. Bella giggled. It's up to me then. Edward nodded. There is no need to rush. Edward, all out children have been named within a month of being out of my stomach. The same will be with her. Bella stated. Yes, dear. Edward answered, sending a wink to his sons. They all smiled at his antics and looked back to their mother. Nina, Bella stated after a few moments. Nina, I like it, Belle. Edward said and then started thinking. Okay, so her long name, her royal name shall be Nintelmaparter. Yes, Nintelmaparter, my female offspring. They all took time to watch over their sister and fully agreed that they would have to take extra care of her when she grew older. Edward, when do girls get their monthly or start having boyfriends? Bella asked after about a month had gone by. The boys all stared at her. Charlie and Mark were the only ones to have had health classes yet, so they understood the question, but it shocked them all. Well, she won't be dating really. She will be matched up with a male. That will occur around her 20th to 30th birthday. As for her monthly, we never learned that in school. Bella looked at him shocked. No, Edward, my daughter will not be in an arranged marriage. Edward looked to her. But it is how females join their males here. It has been that way for eons. No, Edward, our daughter and sons will join their counterparts because of love, Bella stated. Edward looked unsure of himself. Very few times, if ever, had his son seen him so vulnerable. Do you regret how we came to be? Do you wish to have been with another? One of his tails was around Kevin, and the other was in his pouch in Bella, but his two remaining tails braided together much like his sons had when they were uncertain and afraid. Bella looked at the male who had loved her and cherished her for almost 17 years. Itoma Partle, you made me live again and I will forever love you. We have about 250 years left or more to live together, and our connection grows every day. I am not saying that I don't want our sons to find their counterpart like you found me, but if they so choose to look for counterparts here, then you will allow them to choose for themselves. The same goes for our daughter. They will find the one they love as much as you love me. You will not use them for political ties or for easing the tempers of war. Do you understand me, my love? He looked at her and smiled. My little pet, you always know how to set me straight. I promise to have them do as you so wish. I promise I will not intervene. However, my sweet loving human pet, I will have to approve of any male that wishes to deflower my daughter. Bella giggled, as will her brothers and I, my dear counterpart. As will we. Soon the kingdom was informed of the birth of the princess. Gifts poured in and everyone rejoiced. The royal family continued to grow until Bella had their 10th child. Edward was distraught after his Bella had almost perished. His sons and daughter were all beside themselves as they watched their mother suffer. Nina had 5 older brothers and 4 younger ones. All 10 children were loved dearly, and they loved their parents dearly. Bella continued to lactate so much that Edward drank from her every 6 hours after feeding her. Their children all searched for someone to love and hold as dear as their father held their mother, and Nina wanted someone to love her as her father loved her mother. When each child found the one they wished to have as a counterpart, they would bring them home to their parents. Many times the sons would bring someone who looked down on their mother. Suffice to say, they were escorted out by the guards. Many times females wished to come before their mother, but the boys all held their mother high. Some females just wanted to be royals, but yet all the princes found their counterpart before their 30th year. As such, Nina was not so lucky. Every male wanted her simply because she was an anomaly, much like her mother. But they found her attractive not because of her small stature, but because of her tall stature. She was one of the tallest females in the history of Zorkston. Height passed on from her father. She was a beauty like her mother, but stood at 18 zotons. Still, by her 35th year she had found her counterpart. Over the years the amount of females born on Zorkston increased, and on the 100th anniversary of Bella's arrival, Edward announced that captivators had made their final travel to Earth. Human females were no longer needed to help sustain the kingdom. Bella spent most her time in her counterpart's pouch, and after the near-death experience, she was greatly weakened. Her children cared for her and nursed her back to health, though she was left so vulnerable and weak that it took the greater part of 10 years before she was back to perfect health. Edward allowed his sons and daughter to aid with ruling the kingdom. Edward decided to step down from the throne when he turned 150. However, his children outvoted him. They wished for him to remain king in name, but would rule the kingdom as a unit. All 10 used their strengths, and the people followed faithfully. Edward oversaw everything but spent most of his days with his Bella. It took decades for her to return to her happy self. After she was informed she could no longer have children, she felt as though she had failed Edward, and feared he would send her away. By the time Edward was 200, the children had taken over everything that had to do with ruling the country and having children of their own. When the grandchildren left the pouch, they would be found with their grandmother and grandfather, as their parents worked. Soon the grandchildren were in school and then helping rule the kingdom. Not long after, they too were with their counterparts. By Edward's 350th birthday, he had aged greatly and spent most of his time in bed. Bella had deteriorated with him. The love they had for one another never wavered, but grew every day they were together. On the eve of the 350th anniversary of Bella's arrival, both Edward and Bella succumbed to a peaceful death in their sleep. Their children found them as they were often found. Edward curled around her as she snuggled into his pouch. Both had smiles on their faces. Both looked peaceful. The end.